Okay, what I'm going to show you here today on this Pontiac Fiero is how to install this add-on adjuster for the proportioning system on the stock combination valve here. This will allow you to adjust the brake pressure bias up to 4 times over stock on an 88 model and up to 3 times over stock on an 84 to 87 model year. They are different adjusters but look almost identical, so make sure you have the right one. This particular adjuster is for an 88, and the only real difference is the size of the opening for the seal. I have here a plunger on an earlier model, and as you can see, it won't fit. However, the installation for the two is identical. The first thing we want to do is make sure that when you put the adjuster in, there isn't going to be any interference. So I'm just going to turn this around for the sake of checking the alignment. And it looks like in this case the alignment is fairly good, a little close to the body, and there's clearance to the brake booster. So to make an adjustment, one of the things I like to use for this job is an adjustable wrench. It fits over the combination valve in a number of different ways. In this case, I'm just going to move it ever so slightly this way. Now, to install the adjuster, you're going to run into some clearance issues with the brake booster if you just try and throw it in assembled as it is there. As you can see, it's hitting the brake booster and it's not quite lined up. So we're going to break it down into components and then assemble it. Use a 3/4 inch wrench to loosen the nut on the end of the proportioning valve chamber. If it's an 84 to 87, you're going to use a 13/16 wrench. Once you have the nut loose, do the rest by hand. But first I'm going to throw something down there to grab the fluid. Okay, now we're ready to go. Use your fingers as you see fit to loosen this nut. I find it easiest to put pressure on the end of the nut while I'm turning it. Also, you want to keep pressure on the end of the nut so that when it does let go, you don't lose any of the internal components since it is under a spring load. There we go. Out comes the old nut. Thread on the body of the new adjuster, making sure everything lines up. Again with the 3/4 inch wrench. Be careful not to over tighten since all these components are aluminum. That's it, you're sealed. You could go ahead and bleed the brakes now if you wanted, but I'm going to finish assembling this valve first. Next, you install this piece, making sure that it has some lubrication on it. I like to use the white grease here. Just carefully slide it in the end. Then slide in the spring. I like to have grease or oil on the spring just in case there's moisture in the air. It should help protect the spring. find the end with my finger and shove that in. Then put in the adjusting screw. Okay, now I can see it just made contact with the spring there. I'm going to back it off a little bit so it's not contacting the spring. Tighten up the locking nut. There. Now the system's been closed. You have an adjustable proportioning adapter, and backed off in this way, your system is same as stock. To make adjustments to increase the rear brake pressure bias, you increase the spring tension by screwing in your adjusting screw. Do not remove this locking nut here, as removing that nut might cause you to overcompress the internal spring, therefore possibly damaging it. Also, this adjusting screw should be adjusted finger tight only. Now you're done. Bleed the brakes. You only have to bleed the rear system since you only opened the rear system. Making adjustments to this valve is not covered in this video, but I will say that a good starting point is only a few turns in. So if I loosen the locking nut, back it off a bit, turn it until I'm making contact. There, I'm making contact now with the spring. Few turns in, lock down your setting. That would be a good starting point to start your calibration. Keep in mind, if you have a brake caliper conversion on your car and you're using modern post-ABS brakes on the rear, you likely have undersized rear brakes. There isn't likely any amount of adjusting you can do to fully lock up the rears. The pistons in those calipers are just too small. This will definitely help though if you just crank your screw all the way down and then test it to make sure that you don't lock up the rears before the fronts. Also, if you've installed a larger brake booster, you'll likely have to move the combination valve forward a few inches. This involves more work and possibly making new brackets.